Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Finance and Public Service Overview and Scrutiny Panel. If we start with agenda item 1, I notice obviously there's a lot of people here tonight, so we'll go through the evacuation procedure. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs, do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Virgin Money Building, formerly the Yorkshire Bank, on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the green fire exit signs. If you need assistance in getting out of the building, please make yourself known to a member of the staff. Can I ask now at this stage that people have their mobile phones turned off or to silent, please? Under normal circumstances, we would be recording and broadcasting this meeting live. However, we have some issues with the tech tonight, so we will be publishing a recording of the meeting as soon as possible, tomorrow hopefully. Item 2, apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Tromans, who's been substituted by Councillor Morton. Thank you, Councillor Morton. And Councillor M. Wright, who is being substituted by Councillor Condacor. Thank you for coming to substitute Councillor Condacor. We also have apologies from one of our co-opted members, Mrs. Ross, but I see she's here. So I'll scratch that. Thank you. Okay. Before we start the meeting, I appreciate this is an emotive meeting because of the subject matter of the main agenda item. So I'd just like to point out that this is a council overview and scrutiny panel meeting. It's not a public debate. And as such, we will be looking at the items on the agenda only. And a council scrutiny panel is not empowered to make decisions as such. What it can do is make recommendations to Cabinet and Council. So please bear that in mind, that we are not empowered to actually make decisions. Moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting. I have the minutes of the previous meeting in front of me. Can I have a proposer and seconder for the minutes, please? Councillor Kenner has proposed them. Do I have a second? Councillor Watkins, thank you. I'll just take a second and sign the minutes. Okay. Right. Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of interest and party whip. Are there any declarations of interest to declare from councillors that are not published in the schedule? Councillor Condacor.
Tonight, it's 100% renewables where I'm an unpaid director. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That's great. At this point, because again of the nature of the meeting, I wish to take item 7, the reopening of the Civic Hall, as the next agenda item. The reason for doing this is because there's a lot of information in this. There's a lot of information that members of the public here want to see and know. And this will enable us to put that information out there so you can see it, you can hear it straight away, rather than waiting till further in the meeting. So I'm guessing that the rest of the panel is happy with that? Good. In which case then we can move on to item 7 of the agenda.
And that's Director Hollis.
Director Hollis, would you like to give your report?
Presenting the report on behalf of the Public Services portfolio holder. So the report responds to the call-in received, printed in the minutes, meeting papers following the full council on the 19th of October, and provides information and appendices to support the decision made to not reopen the Bedworth Civic Hall at this time. The report provides the panel with full details related to the Bedworth Civic Hall and the decisions made by Cabinet on the 12th of October. close the facility at this time due to earlier expected termination of the CWPT licence, which was used for a vaccination facility, and the financial constraints being placed upon the local authority. It also details the engagement through expressions of interest approved on the 9th of November Cabinet. Section 4 of the report provides the background and a copy of the original report, again printed in the minutes on the 12th of October, and the decision for the closure of the Civic Hall on the 31st of October. Sections 4.5 and 4.6 also highlight the current arrangements of the Bedworth Arts Centre and support offered. Subsequently, the Council has been notified that they wish to terminate their licence agreement at the end of December this year. In section 4.8, Appendix B, a copy of the consultant's report, as drafted in November 21, is provided. It provides background information related to the facility and also commentary due to the pandemic and the entertainment environment. Following notification to the officers, there was an error highlighted in the report on page 7, table 7, in that attendees from the 2020 pantomime and some external hire had been missed off. In the report and the attachments, Chair, these have been amended and rectified, and everybody has a copy of that such report. That was a genuine error, Chair, that there was an error in the table. It also highlighted the report undertaken by a leisure consultant. The consultant who undertook the drafting of the report had 30 years plus experience in the arts and entertainment sector. He had operational and strategic experience in managing and overseeing arts and cultural facilities, so was in a good position to review that, Chair. Appendix C provides actual data and ticket sales from the updated Civic Hall Pro Venue box office system. Prior to March 2020, the Civic Hall was using an older software version for ticket sales. Some members may remember that this required, for example, the actual ticket sales to be hard copy printed and actually presented to attendees and posted in the post. All tickets had to be administered through the Civic Hall and had limited facilities were available for using online and web technology. Following the closure in March 2020 due to the pandemic, the box office team then implemented the new software upgrade, which had been procured previously, but just due to time required to implement the new system, update the software, the downtime of the existing system hadn't been done previously. Data was transferred from the old system to the new system, and in Appendix C, you will see this is the actual data from the new Pro Venue box office system. I must update, and it is noted in the consultant's report and in other OSP reports previously, the external hire bookings manage their own tickets. So there isn't a robust, accurate recollection of the tickets sold when it was a private hire. So Appendix C is 100% accurate because that's gone through the new box office system and gives you a full understanding of what the ticket sales were for private hire and for council promoted shows. So consequently, some of the previous data used presented at previous OSPs do not exactly match with the data provided in Appendix C. I just wanted to point that out, Chair. Section 5 of the report provides the current position. Appendix D of the report provides an itemised update as to works required to reopen the site for use. The works total circa 55,000K. Please note, previously these were estimated at 100K. However, the critical control panel that was identified for replacement, estimated at 35 to 40K, has been removed from this list and included in Appendix E. That is part of the overall boiler and heating system replacement, and this is detailed in section 5.2 of the report. Appendix E provides a full copy of the report of the advice note from the independent consultant engineer, detailing the current system and in his professional opinion, what is required to provide an efficient and reliable hot water and heating system for the next 20 years operation. You will note from the report that the Civic Hall currently has a total of 8 boilers, 3 of which are not working and are obsolete. One further boiler, while still working, is obsolete, and if any issues happen with that boiler, it cannot be repaired or replaced due to its age. The 4 remaining boilers are all working but are ageing and having to work very hard to maintain the requirements of the site due to its size, and given the other 3 boilers are not working. It's also worth noting that the 4 working boilers were reclaimed from a previous site, and so a second hand when they were put into the Civic Hall. For clarification, in the consultant's report, it was highlighted that a cost of £200,000 would be required for boiler replacement. This was an estimate figure for just 3 of the boilers that are not working currently, not the entire system as quoted between £700,000 and £850,000. In the Cabinet report of the 12th of October, there was a mention of 3 boilers for the estimated figure of £700,000 to £850,000. This was a typo. It was for the whole replacement of the system, Chair. Section 6 provides an overview of the finances with specific reference to sections 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3 and the financial pressures at this time, and a budget overspend as of September 22 of £934,579 and a predicted saving target of 1.56 million required for the 23-24 budget for the authority. Section 6.6, Appendix F of the report, provides a financial overview and summary of the past years of the Civic Hall finances. Having reviewed the report for tonight, we can see that the formatting of the spreadsheet has changed, and so hard copies will be made available in a spreadsheet format, and also we'll be putting those online, so anybody that is looking to express an interest can see those in a spreadsheet format on an A3 size sheet. Section 6.7 and Appendix G provides the Civic Hall update and action plan reported at the time of the ISOP panel prior to the closure due to the pandemic. The information relates to previous year's reports and requests for updates and action plan put in place. You will see in the appendices that there's clear action plans and they're RAG rated red, amber, green at that time as to how they were being progressed. For example, at that time, the Civic Hall had a draft bar facility, which has been removed to a bottle bar that was being put in place, implementing the new box office system, review of the old kitchen area, and looking at systems and processes, etc., and marketing promotions going forward. So there's quite a detailed action plan there with what was being done and what needed to be done, Chair. Section 6.8 Appendix H provides information received from the Theatres Trust, and I thought that was worth noting for people to understand where the Theatres Trust were and could provide support. Section 6.10 Appendix I is a copy of the Equality Impact Assessment undertaken for the closure of the Civic Hall at the time of the report. Section 7 updates the panel on the report presented to Cabinet on the 9th of November and the decision taken by members to engage and provide information on expressions of interest to be launched. A press release and links were provided on the 10th of November via the Council's website. Appendix J provides information for the expressions of interest to be received. We are further working on that, Chair, in terms of finalising a specific template for everybody to complete the same information, so that will be fairness and equality in terms of assessing those EOIs. The launch date of the expressions of interest was the 10th of November, with a closing date of the 9th of January 2023. The closing date has since been changed to the 30th of January at 12 noon to reflect the Christmas period and provide organisations time to consult with other interested parties, and obviously during the Christmas period as well. Following a verbal request by an interested party, please note that in section 7.4 there will be an opportunity for an open day visit to the Civic Hall in the new year to be arranged for expressions of interest received. Finally, Chair, yesterday we found site plans of the Civic Hall, and we will have hard copies of those tonight. We will also put those on the Council's website so the expressions of interest can provide those and make those available online as well following tonight's report. They also include the occupancy levels of each rooms in the Civic Hall so that expressions of interest can understand what the fire requirements are of the building. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Hollis. I'll open this up to any member of the panel who has questions. We have public speaking at item 5, which we will be taking after this item. I'm taking this item. I'm asking members of the panel if they have any questions. Point of order.
Speak on that item after it's been presented by the officer, and I think out of courtesy to the people here, we should listen to them before we actually discuss the item. Otherwise, it is totally backwards. So can I move that we take public speaking on item 7 now, and can I have a second for that, please?
We have a proposal before us to take public speaking. We can take this to a vote. All those in favour?
Councillor seconding.
Let's take the vote again. All those in favour?
Mr Chairman, from the public, I have an email from the council saying that I will have 3 minutes to speak on item 6. They should not be listening. It is shameful, Mr Chairman. You're shameful. You're shameful.
Take a second here, thank you. I've taken advice from the legal counsel here, and I'm happy to accept public speaking on this item now. And I just want to point out this is not a free-for-all, it's only people that have registered to speak on this item. So we have some people who've registered to speak. I'll take them now. I'll call the names out in the order that they're listed here. Clearly, some people have attended in person and wish to read their statements or ask questions, and others, we have written statements from them. We will happily read them out. There's no intention to try and deny anybody the opportunity to speak. I just want to try and get the information out there as soon as possible. First person we have listed here is Peter Smith. I believe Mr. Smith is here. Would you like to make your statement or speech? I'll remind you, you have 3 minutes to speak.
In which the civic hall fiasco is unravelling is something else. Employees first heard about this via Facebook. A Telegraph article announced the destruction, which was then followed up by a council U-turn due to the pressure from the public. Whilst the civic hall is the headline, everyone else seems to be forgetting about the bigger picture. We visited the Arts Centre today and it was a hive of activity. Disabled groups were rehearsing for their big Christmas event. The place was buzzing, 50 or so disabled people, obviously oblivious to what is about to happen to them. The 5 best assets in Bedworth town that public care about are to be destroyed. The People in Action building, who support the disabled and vulnerable adults, the Bedworth Library, the Arts Centre, the Civic Hall and the only public car park in Bedworth Centre. Bedworth has many other buildings that are actually not wanted by the public. The Bedworth police station is running at 10% capacity. The police do not even like working there. The King's House building is an eyesore and a blot on the landscape. The former Pin Public House has been derelict for 20 years. The former Queen's Public House is derelict and the former Engine Public House is derelict. All of these alternative buildings would be more suitable for the something new to develop. The Civic Hall is a decent building with many years life left in it. Far cheaper to improve it than destroy it and build another one. The council has stated in the last meeting that they do not want to manage decline. Well, they are actually creating the decline with their destructive proposals. We have just sent a report to the auditors regarding the council's yearly accounts. The council withheld from the public. The core business of the council keep harping on about seems to be lending money, buying property, buying speculative financial products and hiding lending in subsidiary limited companies. Can the council reimagine their plans for Bedworth Town Centre and come up with something that serves the people? A good starting point would be to help support all the good people in this room today, that way that want to try and save the Civic Hall. Thank you.
The next speaker we have, or the next statement we have, is from a Mrs. Jane Law. I believe she's not here, so we'll read that one out.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the statement from Jane Law. She says as follows: regarding Bedworth Civic Hall and the local council's underhanded decision to demolish without any public consultation, when this is normal practice and has been carried out on Kersley Library and currently Kersley Community Centre. In view of the fact that evidence has been produced to show that fictional figures have been made public in financial accounting, huge discrepancies, the exaggerated cost for boiler replacement, the incredible discrepancy in the number of tickets sold for shows, the cost of utilities, need I say more? As the figures you have published are so wrong, I feel that a full audit of assets and their depreciation should be carried out by at least one independent organisation. Any delay causing this audit being carried out should be added onto the closure date for organisations providing proposals for running the Civic Hall. A purchase price for the building, which should also be made public, should any organisation stroke charity wish to purchase, price to reflect the lack of compliance and faulty equipment. There has been nothing but cover-up and lies regarding the civic building in Bedworth, and if Conservative councillors feel that this is all due to Labour Council, stop trying to blame others. Just review what's been spent on swimming pool, unnecessary art, if that's what you deem it. Use the money conservatively, that's an ironic word, isn't it? And provide both Civic Hall and Bedworth swimming pool as entertainment, exercise and public buildings. And that's the statement, Chair.
Thank you. Right, okay. We can move on to the statement from Bradley Smith, I believe. Doesn't look like, is Mr. Smith's not here? One for us to read out.
We haven't got it. Do you want to move on?
We'll move on. Back to that. Yeah. So the next person to speak is Mr. Margrave.
Believe Cabinet's decision is illegal, invalid and open to judicial review. Councillor Wilson said decisions on the Civic Hall were taken in a closed secret meeting behind doors on the 28th of September. I have evidence councillors here made decisions on WhatsApp groups and in your political group prior to May. Cabinet failed to consider all options and papers that we have before us today. Cabinet was therefore predetermined, biased, not objective, and members did not come to the decision with open minds, as is happening tonight. Cabinet also failed to consider its public sector equality duties or to challenge the lack of an equality impact assessment, knowing that disabled groups in the Arts Centre and others in the community, including access to an autism-friendly panto, would be impacted. As such, Section 25 of the Localism Act 2011, the Members' Code and Equality Act 2010 were breached. I therefore ask this committee to seek independent legal advice before any final decision on the call-in. In 2019, Rishi Sunak published guidance about OSPs. He said they must amplify the voices and concerns of the public, hold the executive accountable, and council should welcome challenge. So today I'm asking councillors to put people in our community before politics, to represent residents, not your party. I ask the committee to demand Cabinet act on the Arts Centre heating bills to stop disabled people being evicted. Stop rushing this decision and pause. Take time to read all the new paperwork that came out late. Set up a task and finish group to look at a plan to reopen the Civic Hall, whether under the council or a community trust. Properly scrutinise the November 2021 report and other detailed costs of the Civic Hall. Explore grant funding. Most importantly, please arrange a public meeting and an inquiry. The problem with the meeting today is we talk, you ignore us. You then speak at length, often saying things that are untrue or need to be challenged. We have no say. This isn't a conversation. This is people speaking at each other, not to each other. We need a consultation and conversations. Councillor Wilson said he won't allow a public consultation because residents would say that they want the Civic Hall open. If he denies that, that isn't a functioning democracy. You are not here to rule over residents, but to represent and serve us. Please ask local people what they want and begin to listen to them again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Margrave. Does anybody have any points of clarification or anything they wish to ask on that? There was a lot of specific points in it. No? In which case, we will move on to the next statement. Do we have Mr. Smith's statement yet? Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank
you. Bradley Smith.
Yeah, it should be Mr. Abbott.
Yes. This is quite long, Chair, so bear with me. This is a statement from Mr. Bradley Ellis. He says, number one, historic value. The Civic Hall has historic value. It offers a sense of place and belonging to local residents and the community. Many acts and events are performed at the Civic Hall. Two, future value. The Civic Hall was mismanaged and underutilised. The revenue it generated was from only 90-day occupancy levels. It could bring in 5 times more revenue if 365-day occupancy levels are achieved, coupled with new imaginative ideas that cut costs and improve revenue streams. 3 main things let the Civic Hall down: lack of vision, marketing and event programming. Vision for the Civic Hall. Pavarotti, who rehearsed here, did so because of the acoustic and sound quality of the main room. It is known to have some of the best acoustics for a building of its size outside of London. The tremendous potential of the main room sound quality should be utilised. 1. Utilise the main room for showcasing new blockbuster films. 2. Utilise the main room for showcasing independent film industry films. 3. Utilise the main room for showcasing orchestras, bands and multiple instrument acts and events. 4. Utilise the main room for showcasing special acts and events. 5. Utilise the main room for showcasing all acts that will benefit from the acoustic sound quality. 6. Introduce a discounted room hire rate for weekdays. 2K plus room hire rate is outpricing 80% of the art and entertainment industry. This will increase occupancy levels. 7. Focus on generating revenue through increased food and drink sales to allow for the room hire rate discount. 8. Ditch the boiler heating system and replace with a self-funding solar panel stroke solar air heating system. The increase in electricity prices can be used to create a sustainable self-funded utility bill with no future liability to increases in electricity prices. The large flat roof is ideal for this. 9. Utilise the other rooms, including the Arts Centre, to revitalise and regenerate the local arts and entertainment industry. This would provide inspiration our young people. 10. Consider a charity-based approach or not-for-profit-based approach which can save money and attract alternative funding. This would help turn the building into a financially sustainable operation. 11. Consider new modern ideas for the many rooms and other available spaces, such as day renting, office space, wedding venue hire, wedding reception hire, birthday party hire and events industry offers. 12. Seek help from the public, especially the young, to gain inspiration and new ideas. Marketing the Civic Hall. Number 1, promote events through the unused asset, the MBBC website. This asset receives 50,000 visitors a month. A simple banner advert with the next day Civic Hall event would improve ticket sales. 2, promote events via the council's social media channels, Twitter and Facebook. The recent Shining the Light event in Nuneaton was promoted in this way. 3, modernise and improve the Civic Hall website. The Civic Hall WordPress website was a failure. It gave a bad impression, was not promotional and had a poor search engine ranking. Its search engine ranking share only gave it 500 visitors a month from the 5,000 visitors a month who searched for Bedworth Civic Hall and associated words. 2 more, Chair. 4, the new improved website should be promoted via the unused asset, the MBBC website, to improve ticket sales, search engine position and search engine rankings. And lastly, number 5, promote events through the council's physical assets, including bus stops and town centre park notice boards. These 2 council market assets are currently underutilised for local events. There is event programming, Chair. It just says employ an event programmer that has experience revitalising venues.
Thank you. I'll give you a second or two to record. Do you want to take a drink? Because the next one is Kerry Herbert, which is another written one, I'm afraid, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a short one. So this is a statement from Kerry Herbert. When in opposition, Councillor Wilson complained it was a disgrace that MBBC met in secret session and there is no democracy at Town Hall. Now in charge, the decision to close the Civic Hall, as explained by him at full council on the 19th of October, was taken in secret at the Leadership Board. A meeting took place behind closed doors for 4.5 hours. There are no minutes, no video, no agenda or documents. Cabinet made little comment at the Cabinet meeting. Why aren't the Council debating and deciding things transparently in public, as the Constitution says councillors promised to? Will the committee today ask the Cabinet to promise no more secret meetings and no whip for councillors on deciding the future of the Civic Hall so they can vote with their conscience? Should decisions about the Civic Hall be made in secret? Are there other secret decisions on the Civic Hall that have taken place, for example, within a councillor's WhatsApp group? And can the OSP request this information? And that's a statement from Kerry Herbert, Chair.
Thank you. Fred, we've got a series of written ones here. So the next one is from Janet Batterby. Oh, she's here. Mrs. Batterby, would you like to read your statement?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. While a community trust is an exciting option, it needs funding, support and time. That should read exciting for some people and probably not for others.
Janet, 1 second, you're a bit quiet.
Oh, am I? Sorry, thank you. Is that better? Right, I'll start again. While a community trust is an exciting option, it needs funding, support and time. Will this committee ask the Cabinet to pause its expression of interest process and properly undertake research in a task and finish group in public, with a public inquiry and public meeting to look at all the options for the future of the Civic Hall, from retaining the venue under council management to passing ownership to a community trust? Rushing expressions of interest or closure and the failure to use the time from receiving a report in November 21 to plan means that the council are pushing demolition. Where is the plan to reopen the Civic Hall if the NHS had left in 2023 as planned? Or was the Civic Hall never going to reopen as an entertainment venue under the council? Now, can I just additionally say, I borrowed the task and finish term, the task and finish group term, and I did look that up. Would it be helpful for members of the public to actually know what that means? Because it does relate to OSPs. Or I can provide one that I lifted from Cheshire East Council.
Oh.
Yes, additional information that might help people who didn't know what that is, who don't know what that is, which was me until I looked it up. So, okay, thank you.
Once again, the next one we have then is from Janet Browning. I believe it's a written statement. Joanne Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a statement of Joanne Browning. Councillor Claire Golby on the radio said that there was no more paperwork to be published and it was already all in the public domain. Since then, we've seen a secret report commissioned in 2021 which proposed demolition and closure. The council or councillors still refuse to publish emails and WhatsApp group messages. Now members of this committee have been asked to read 91 pages less than 3 days before the committee meeting. That is no time to prepare and you don't have all the information needed to take a decision today. Will you adjourn this meeting and ask for the information above and more time to read the report in full, to ask questions and do research?
The next written statement is from Nicola Smith, unless she's here to read it out.
Thank you, Chair. Nicola Smith says as follows: the Cabinet report of the 12th October 2022 on page 21 and 22 said in 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 and 5 that Bedworth Arts Centre have an agreement with the Council for use of an area of the Civic Hall. Access to this is separate to the main Civic Hall building. However, the venue shares utilities with the Civic Hall. 4.8 explained that the Council would incur costs in asking the Arts Centre to surrender their lease. The report also explained there wasn't anywhere else for them to go. The report also said there were no Equality Act implications. The Cabinet agreed to work to allow the Arts Centre to continue to the end of their current lease agreement period, 31st of March 2024. Agreeing retaining access to the building for Bedworth Arts Centre to continue operation until the end of their agreement in March 2024 will incur costs for the council. However, the council, knowing there was nowhere for the Arts Centre to go and that in particular a disabled group would lose a warm space and access to a group, not to mention the distress caused by changes, the council, instead of sharing the cost of utilities, hit vulnerable disabled groups and others with the full cost of heating and utilities for the whole Civic Hall, meaning they could stay. Why has the council pushed out disabled people at the Arts Centre? Why is there no equality impact assessment about this? Did the council plan to do this before the cabinet meeting? And who made the decision to use this heavy-handed tactic against the most vulnerable? Was a grant applied to keep the Arts Centre open or use the Civic Hall as a place to provide warmth this winter? Was there an Equality Act assessment undertaken knowing that you were evicting a disabled group? And that's the statement of Nicholas Smith, Chair.
Thank you. Next statement is from Mark Browning, I believe that's another one that we're reading out.
Thank you, Chair. Mark Browning says as follows. Councillor Brown, backed up by Councillor Golby, when asked to hold this OSP in Bedworth, were told the correct place for meetings to be held is the Town Hall in Nuneaton, which is the designated place to conduct official council business. Nuneaton isn't easy for everyone to get to. In the past, major issues about Bedworth and many other council committees and even full council has met in Bedworth and other areas of the borough. Council in the pandemic met in a sports hall. His Majesty's Cabinet met in Stoke-on-Trent. Where is evidence that Nuneaton is a designated place to conduct official council business? Why have other OSPs been held elsewhere in the past, including at the Civic Hall, if that is the case? To give the people of Bedworth a fair chance to have their voices heard, will you adjourn this meeting and reconvene in Bedworth and also have a proper public meeting, so instead of statements that you ignore, you have a conversation with local people? And that's Mr Browning's statement, Chair.
Thank you. I think the next two people are here. So we have Ruth Ison.
Councillor Damon Brown was a previous trustee of the Abbey Theatre in Nuneaton who will benefit from being the only venue in the borough. Councillor Brown has also liked Facebook posts and written to residents in support of proposals that would see the current Civic Hall closed and demolished. He has also predetermined his views on the current building and its future in discussions with residents. He has been actively supporting closure. This is a clear conflict of interest and bias. Should a chair and member of this committee be independent? Shouldn't the chair now recuse himself and let someone else who has said nothing about the closure of the Civic Hall take over the running of the meeting? Should this committee now adjourn today in order to give a replacement chair time to prepare? Thank you.
Next speaker is John Ison.
Formally or informally, political groups on council make decisions and have a whip. Has anyone on this committee been involved in their group in the decisions that have included a group decision or support for closing and demolishing the Civic Hall? Has anyone been party to any WhatsApp messages regarding a plan that would see the current Civic Hall closed and demolished? If so, should those councillors be sitting on this committee, or is this just a case of marking your own work?
The next speaker is S. Young.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Young says as follows. When in opposition, Councillor Wilson complained it was a disgrace that MBBC met in secret session and there is no democracy at Town Hall. Now in charge, the decision to close the Civic Hall, as explained by him at full council on the 19th of October, was taken in secret at the Leadership Board. A meeting took place behind closed doors for 4.5 hours. There are no minutes, no video, no agenda or documents. Cabinet made little comment at the Cabinet meeting. Why aren't the council debating and deciding things transparent in public, as the Constitution says councillors promised to do? Will the committee today ask the Cabinet to promise no more secret meetings and no whip for councillors on deciding the future of the Civic Hall so they can vote with their conscience? Should decisions about the Civic Hall have been made in secret? Are there other secret decisions on the Civic Hall that have taken place, for example, within a councillor's WhatsApp group, and can the OSP request this information? So, Chair, that's the same statement that was read earlier as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Next person we have who's submitted a statement is Jean Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Adams says, comments were made on Facebook that Councillor Watkins and the former leader of the council were involved in 2018 in looking to privatise, sell off or dispose of the Civic Hall. Is it true, and what was discussed at the time, and what was the outcome? What options were explored? Are the day-to-day diaries from 1973 still available? These would indicate the vast variety of shows and artists that were booked. And that's the statement from Jean Adams, Chair.
Thank you. We next have, let's have a look, V. McCormack.
Mrs McCormack says, there was a report done in November 2021 with demolition as an option. If that has been released at the time and action taken to set up a community trust or for the council to reopen, things would have been easier. They are still possible. But the councillors created this situation, lied at elections. If they didn't, they can sue me. It was a lie to say that it was fake news. There was a plan that set out closing the Civic Hall and demolishing it. We know that now. This decision wasn't made after the NHS left, and it was then the councillors in charge had a year to do something and did nothing. That is maladministration. That's the statement, Chair.
Thank you. Janine Dennis.
Janine Dennis says as follows, the councillor hid a report commissioned and given to the then Cabinet member, Councillor Kyle Evans, in November 2021. In that report, there was a recommendation to close the Civic Hall and demolish it. Does the committee accept that telling voters it was fake news, that there were plans to close the Civic Hall, as misleading the public? And why wasn't this report put into the public domain? Can you explain where the report went to and why it didn't come to an OSP or wasn't in the forward plan? Please reverse the decision to close the Civic Hall, as this has no democratic mandate, as people were misled in the elections.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wendy Snell. Thank you.
The Cabinet report from October states, sales of assets within the Civic Hall can generate a small capital receipt. Councillor Wilson at the full council meeting in October said nothing will happen to equipment in the Civic Hall. Has any equipment or item been sold, listed for sale or given away from inside the Civic Hall before or since these meetings? Thank you.
Julie Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement of Julie Whitehouse. Figures show the bar was profitable. There were other plans in place to make the Civic Hall profitable. The council leader said the bar has never been profitable. Who is right? The figures of the leader of the figures or the leader of the council? If the Civic Hall can be profitable, it should remain open. And that's a statement, Chair.
Thank you. Next speaker, I believe, is here, which is Rachel Hardy.
At a previous full council meeting, the leader of the council said there was an application to the Arts Council, but no feedback was given about why it was refused. After investigations, it was found out that the council didn't, in fact, make an application to the Arts Council for the Civic Hall, but only sent an email expressing an interest in maybe applying at some stage in the future. Councillor Wilson then said again an application was made. Can this committee investigate the truth of this matter and also look into what applications for grant funding were made and what the council could have done to ask for funding but didn't? Will the committee now recommend that funding is applied for to look at the future of the Civic Hall and to reopen under the council or community trust? Thank you.
So we now move on to Gail Bend, which I believe is a written statement.
Thank you, Chair. Gail Benn says, Councillor Kyle Evans told residents it was fake news that the Civic Hall was closing. Yet 4 months before making that statement in the council chamber and in election leaflets, he had a report he commissioned which proposed closure and demolition of the Civic Hall as an option. Why didn't Councillor Kyle Evans make this report public? And was there discussions and a plan all along that could see the existing Civic Hall closed and demolished? And that's the statement, Chair.
Thank you. Pauline Ison. It's another written one.
Yes, Pauline Ison says, the council had a year to look at options for the Civic Hall and time to put in place plans to reopen in 2023. What plans did the council put in place, and will these be published along with emails, WhatsApp messages and other information so the public can hold councillors to account for their mismanagement of the Civic Hall? In the wasted year, the council could have invested or had plans to make the Civic Hall break even or help the community set up a community trust to run the venue. By now, there would be funding in place and a solid business plan. Instead, the council is rushing through steps that all head towards closure and demolition of the existing venue. Reverse this decision and keep the Civic Hall open. The council should run it better, not close it. And that's a statement, Chair.
Thank you. Next one is from a Mr. and Mrs. Pendleton.
The statement is as follows, Chair. Decisions around the Civic Hall have been rushed through without the proper information to decide one way or another. If it is true, as Councillor Evans said, the decision to rebuild the Civic Hall were taken a few days after the NHS decided to revoke the agreement. If that is true, the council hasn't taken time to properly undertake work to look at all options, which is clearly apparent from the Cabinet report used to take the decision to close the Civic Hall. Why, when Councillor Evans commissioned a report and had a copy in November 2021, didn't he bring it to this committee or put it on a forward plan and the council look at how it can reopen the Civic Hall? Or did the council plan to demolish the Civic Hall all along? To book acts and reopen would have taken 18 months of planning. Where is the plan to reopen the Civic Hall in 2023? Or was it just fake news by Councillor Evans that it was not closing? Please reverse this decision and plan to reopen the Civic Hall. That's the statement, Chair.
Our next speaker is listed as Jean Newitt. Are you here? Thank you.
Former area office in Bedworth is used as temporary accommodation. If the Civic Hall is closed and the site demolished, what is the impact on those who would be homeless? And will an empty building see an increase in antisocial behaviour? Thank you.
So we move on to Jean Busby, who I believe is also here.
The council made a mistake in closing the Civic Hall, and this shouldn't be happening. Where has the money gone from the income from the NHS or the hundreds of thousands set aside by the previous administration to undertake works at the Civic Hall? Was SLL the best consultancy to look at the future of the Civic Hall? How did they get the permission to undertake the work? Why didn't their report feature in the Cabinet report of the 12th of October 2022? And surely that means Cabinet, when making the decisions, didn't have all the information before them, so shouldn't have taken the decision. Thank you.
Smith, who I believe is here. Thank you.
In the Cabinet report of the 12th of October 2022, 5.5 states there will be security costs to consider while the building stands dormant and to ensure that the council meets its insurance requirements. Costs to be identified. What are the costs and what has been put in place to safeguard the building so it isn't vandalised and damage isn't caused?
I have a couple to read out. So we've got Christine Robson.
Yes, Chair. Christian Robson says, on CWR, Councillor Chris Wilson, the leader of the council, said anyone who wants concrete plans of the future of the Civic Hall site is living in cloud cuckoo land, but surely councils and councillors have a duty to have plans and money in place before demolishing or closing buildings. If the vision set out by Chris Wilson is real and going to happen, why isn't it mentioned at all in the Cabinet paper of the 12th of October 2022, and where is the money coming from? Have any plans been made to make the vision a reality? Because the council minutes there seems to be no evidence that that is the case. It seems nothing more than a drawing. Is spending £600,000 on demolition and millions on buying people in action to demolition them with no plan or funding for what comes next really good value for taxpayers? Wouldn't it be better to spend the hundreds of thousands on saving the Civic Hall? That's a statement, Chair.
Thank you. Our next speaker, or our next statement is from Clive Stock.
Mr. Stock says, while it is said that Civic Hall loses money, the Civic Hall also has significant ticket sales and brings in money over 800k. So the issue is one of outgoings. As Mr. McCorber said, annual income £20, annual expenditure 19, 19 and 6, result happiness. Annual income £20, annual expenditure £20, ought and 6, result misery. That's what needs fixing. So what are the costs of running the Civic Hall? Has this committee looked in detail at the granular costs of running the Civic Hall or the recharges made by the council, asking the Civic Hall to pay for things the taxpayer has already paid for? For example, HR or corporate costs. If the Civic Hall closes, these costs will remain in the council, won't they? Or will the council be making staff at the town hall redundant too? What is the real loss figure of the Civic Hall? And once the recharges are removed, does the Civic Hall lose any more than the museum in Nuneaton? Will you now form a task and finish group to look at the detail in public and put a plan together to make the Civic Hall books balance? That's the statement, Chair.
Thank you. The final written statement for you to read out is from Rebecca Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Rebecca Thorpe says, under section 1.7 of the Council's Constitution, citizens' rights, quote, citizens have a number of rights in their dealings with the Council. These are set out in more detail in Article 3. Some of these are legal rights. F, participate in the Council's question and comments time and, at the request of the relevant overview and scrutiny panel, contribute to investigations by the overview and scrutiny panels. G, find out from the Executive's forward plan what major decisions are to be discussed by the Cabinet or decided by the Cabinet or officers when they attend meetings of the Cabinet. H, see reports and background papers and any record of decisions made by the Council and Cabinet. However, the Council has not listed the Civic Hall on the forward plan despite having in a report from November 2021 that included a proposal to close and demolish the Civic Hall, not provided reports or background papers at the Cabinet meeting on the 12th of October 2022, which have just appeared days before this meeting, failed to keep records of decisions of the Council as the decision as outlined by Councillor Wilson to close the Civic Hall was made in a secret meeting behind closed doors. Will this OSP challenge Cabinet in respect of its handling of this matter, the issues above, and set up a public meeting and hold an investigation which also hears from the public and stakeholders? That's the statement, Chair.
Thank you. Last two people listed to speak are here, so I'll call Ian Calvert.
Are currently here, and current councillors that are on this committee that were members of the Conservative Party prior to the election stated that the previous Labour administration for many years had manipulated figures on attendance and the costs and purely stated that they were wrong and they would be able to prove this when they came into office. However, since coming into office, they have commissioned a report which actually highlights venues but excludes the venues that these councillors stated prior to the election win and that they are actually involved in. So therefore, why did these councillors actually turn around and never approve the strategic report when it is actually missing venues that are comparable in statute to the Civic Hall and the ticket sales? Furthermore, showing these to various organisations, the cost of producing a report that the officer has shared in relation to the plumbing would cost normally between £500 and £2,000. The cost of producing this strategic report would cost well into 4 figures, if not 5 figures. Therefore, both projects should have gone out via the CSW JETS tendering system. There is no record of these on there. With this expenditure taking place and various expenditures missing, how can we actually turn around and put together a project to say, yes, we could take it on without all the correct figures? The officer earlier stated that plans have actually been released on the internet and they were released today. However, they are factually inaccurate because they are dated 2009, and therefore we need actual floor plans and accurate figures of today. If you are providing insurance for health, safety, fire and insurance regulations, detailed plans must be provided to those organisations to make sure the fire and insurance is valid. If those plans that I can see there on the table and are on the internet have actually been submitted, that is false declaration. We therefore need proper, accurate information. And with all the information that I have gleaned, I have shared this with various bodies to help me put together a bid, and they have all come back to me saying that these figures and information is misleading. If we are to turn around and put in a bid, we need a proper timetable, frame and dates. What the officers, maybe influenced by the councillors or the councillors influencing the officers, have done is they have turned around and put into account a timetable, which means that getting any viable performing acts via organisations that I've spoken to have said that the calendar for 2023 has been virtually eliminated. So is this the action that the council had in mind, to make sure that nothing could be used in that venue until 2024? If we are lucky, a proper timetable needs to be put into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Final speaker is Mr. Ben Main.
Officers, I come before you this evening to support the plans currently surrounding the current closure of Bedworth Civic Hall. Sitting from the sidelines and watching meetings over the last few weeks, we have heard from a small minority who have been against the current action. The last meeting made reference to a petition, which, when considering the population of Nuneaton and Bedworth combined, shows about 2% of the population had signed the petition. Note, this does no doubt include people who do not live in the borough and are not financially contributing via council tax. I do welcome the news in the last few weeks that it has now opened up for viable, financially backed, interested parties to step forward. I do, however, strongly urge and recommend that if this was to take place, that no subsidies at all are given by the council to support a new venture. Enough is enough now. With a year upon year financial loss, the residents of the borough should not be footing to prop up the Civic Hall. We've heard arguments from both councillors, members of the public, very little from Labour, who presided over the Civic Hall running for many, many years. Let's not forget this. They remain quiet, no doubt a ploy to try and wash their hands of this, and it should permanently close, then use it as a political tool. I effectively see the current Conservative councillors delivering a message that should have been done years ago. Points of consultations was conducted by leisure specialists. This does not remove the fact it runs at a loss. Argument of an admin error over ticket sales now corrected doesn't remove the fact it runs at a loss. Arguments on the boiler and electric quotes that are overly inflated or not correct doesn't remove the fact it still runs at a loss. The relevant and timely budget updates sadly show the reality of the situation, with now a deficit of £900,000 or higher for the financial year of savings to be made by the council. I feel some people are completely overlooking this fact, or maybe don't want to accept the realities. There is clearly no money to, 1, regenerate at significant cost the Civic Hall, and 2, reopen it running at a loss again. I draw inferences from the fact that the majority of Nuneaton and Bedworth residents have not poured out demanding for it to be open. In this, the council should be reassured that the current action being taken is supported by the residents and not having to foot the bill. I wish any new prospective purchasers the best of luck if they do take on the Civic Hall, but I ask the council that if this is the case, no money is taken from residents' council tax to support it. Regeneration is a positive word and should be deemed that way by residents. A small vocal minority see regeneration as bad and look to play it down or undermine the good work of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Main, as our last contributor on this. So with that said, we now move to the bit where councillors can now debate the report and ask any questions. So does any member have any questions, points they wish to raise, please? Councillor Condacall.
First anyway. I've got a long list of questions, obviously going first. The first few are about the Arts Centre, because I am very concerned that there wasn't an equality impact assessment done to see what the impact of the boiler heating charge has been laid on them, which has effectively closed it 15 months earlier. That 15 months could have been a period when the community could have saved the Civic Hall and then effectively saved the Arts Centre. So I think there needs to be some explanation of why the council has expected the Arts Centre to suddenly pay the whole bill, and why there wasn't an equality impact assessment on that. Second question is about the soft market testing, because obviously when this secret report was done a year ago, there was an opportunity then to ask people, will you take on the Civic Hall under contract or whatever? There was about 6 or 7 options in that November report, one of which I believe Councillor Wilson said was slightly looked at in terms of seeing if the market was interested in taking it on. We actually need to know about that as a committee, so that we can actually see how viable those were and what organisations were asked, and also what organisations weren't asked, because obviously I'm quite keen on education and maybe a university or King Edward's College or the Tech or someone else using part of the building for education, arts, drama. Yeah, so it's who we soft market tested to is a really important question. Really interested in the Theatre Trust letter as well, because they were under the impression that we're going to build a new venue. They seem to not be opposing the demolition of the Civic Hall from their letter because they thought we're building a new venue. So have they been misled, and what did we tell the Theatre Trust? And the question I did actually pre-warn Kevin Hollis was, I'd like to know the value of the building on the books, because for various people wanting to take over the building, they may need to buy the lease or buy the building, or they might, if we don't know what the building's worth, it's very hard then to actually say, well, don't demolish it because it's worth 10 million, or it's only worth $500,000, we can buy it. So I think the value of the building is really important to know. Thank you.
Do members of the portfolio holders there have any answers that they wish to give to the questions raised?
The first question, the equalities impact for the Arts Centre. There was actually an equalities impact done for the whole of the Civic Hall, and the Arts Centre is part of that. The bill that we actually said that they could keep their lease. We weren't asking them to leave, but they were asked. We said that we would pay their the utility bills until the end of this year, and they have chosen to leave. We haven't asked them to leave. We haven't asked them to pay all of the utilities. We've only asked them to pay the part for the Arts Centre. They've been subsidised for quite some time, and because of that, they've decided that they want to leave. So that's number one. The soft market testing, because of the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of soft market testing coming forward to us, because people were in the pandemic and they weren't looking for anything. So that's that one. What was number 3? Sorry, I'm going.
In terms of correspondence back to the Theatre Trust, they have been made aware and are aware of the current situation. So it isn't just that was what was reported on the 12th. They're fully aware of the current situation and what the Cabinet decisions have been, Chair.
So it's just what they wrote in response. They were given the full information, and their response is what it is.
Was passed to me, and subsequently I've been in contact with them to update them so they're aware of the current situation, Chair.
Councillor who wishes to speak. I know you've got some further points, Councillor Condacore.
You do or have a valuation done on the building. We can't give a true figure of what the value of it is at the moment, and that hasn't been done yet, obviously.
Councillor Hammersley.
All you people over there, I just want to give you some points for you all to peruse. These wonderful ideas of how to keep this Civic Hall open, why were these not suggested years ago when we had nothing to do with the Civic Hall? Maybe if these suggestions were there, maybe also we would not be sitting here talking about it now. Over the last 10 years, it's had a loss of over £7 million. And I found out also, since the day it opened, it has never made a profit of 1 penny. I just wonder how many millions that comes to of ratepayers' money. We, as a council, are responsible. We could not allow this to continue. And what of the thoughts of the people who don't use the Civic Hall, being asked to contribute some of their ratepayers' money to keep it open? Why should they pay to keep it open, as people have asked me? And it's really echoing what Mr. Main said over there. What about their thoughts that don't go to the Civic Hall, having to keep it alive? Thank you, Chair.
I'm afraid you can't. It's point of order. I'm sorry. You've had your chance to have your say. This is the point where the councillors are talking about the report. So I'll take Mrs. Ross first and then Councillor Watkins.
I think who amongst us sitting here today would have realised and anticipated the state that we're in at the moment. Looking at the report of the Civic Hall, I can see its days are numbered, and I think even the report from the Theatre Trust actually sets that out right across the country, that there are problems. We are going through a heck of a bad period now, and we know that this is not the wealthiest of communities or authorities throughout the country, and a lot of people in our community will be suffering over the next few months. The problems are going to be horrific with fuel, with energy, with our eating and drinking, but everything we do in life really going down the hill. So as the NHS contract was due to run until the 23rd of March, I understand from the report, someone somewhere must have anticipated that the Civic Hall would have been operational and viable until that date. Now, what I'm thinking is now that surely to goodness throughout the country, we should have homes somewhere warm for people who are unemployed, people who are lonely, people who have got mental problems, etc., etc. I'm sorry to hear about the disabled, and I know that the arts people are not very happy at the moment over the way things are going, but I do think that we have a duty of care to people in our community to have some sort of warm space for them to go to, even if it's only for the first time and the last time for the coming winter months. I believe that some consideration should be given to keeping this Civic Hall open. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Watkins, I've got Councillor Downs indicating. Councillor Downs then.
I've been sitting here tonight watching listening, obviously, to Mr Margrave, Mr Colvert over there, and various other people and statements. Also what my colleagues have been saying on this side. I'd like to see what you've got, Sam, personally. Seriously. Yeah? Instead of shouting at each other over a chamber. Yeah? And you, Ian. You know, let's see what you've got. That's from me to you. Let's have a coffee. Yeah? Because trust me, if there's a way of saving it, I'm all for it, mate. Seriously. So can we agree tonight, please, to fix a date and sit down in Costa or wherever and have a coffee? Is that all right with you guys? I'm not the enemy here. I've lived in Bedworth all my life. That's all I want to know, yeah? But also, what you got to remember is, we can't make recommendations tonight. All we can do is vote on two things. Accept the recommendations in full, which means not to reopen the Civic Hall at the moment, but keep the Arts Centre there, yeah? Or do not accept the recommendations. That's it. Pardon? I'm not lying. It's what it says there. I'm eating for a coffee. Thank you.
I think let's just keep this civil. I think you were asked if you want to go and have a meet for a coffee and have a chat. Next speaker is Mr. Councillor Watkins. Sorry.
Well, we've heard a lot of statements and facts tonight. But what I would like to put forward to the group to vote on tonight is a recommendation that we do have either, there's two sorts of groups we can have. It's either a working group or a task and finish group. Mrs Battersby offered to explain about a task and finish group, but there is also the working group, which I have chaired in the past. There's lots of questions come up and lots of questions need answering. So I'd like to recommend that we do set up with people who are interested either a working group or a task and finish group, and that is for us to decide tonight. If we do recommend that to Cabinet, and then that can start as soon as possible, it will need all the interested parties to come forward, and obviously councillors, to sit on either of what we decide on. But there is far too many questions that have come forward from what we've heard. The first I heard about it was when I had a call from Coventry, Warwickshire, BBC Radio, about the demolition of the Civic Hall, and they were good enough to phone me back the following day because I had to have an emergency meeting about it. I also find it difficult to believe that we don't know how much the Civic Hall is worth. So we've got a Civic Hall that's one of the biggest buildings that we own within Bedworth, and we don't know how much it's worth. So if it was to burn down, what would we do? So I find that a bit disturbing. And then that would bring us on to other questions that would arise from the task and finish or working group on some of our other assets, because have we got them properly valued? And I would doubt that we have. I would also like to know what the outcome of the conversations were with Warwick University, which Bedworth Conservative Councillor has emailed, and he said he didn't mind his email being shared. Warwick University has expressed an interest in Bedworth over Nuneaton as a potential for moving parts of its campus to Bedworth. So where is that documentation? It's something that we need to see. I would also back that we do something similar to what we've done with the swimming baths when we brought in the Leisure Trust or whoever we bring in to take over the running of Bedworth Civic Hall, but also keep it for the people of the borough and further afield. So that if it was a college, university took over the running of it, and the people, the general public could still use it access it. And that would have to be drawn up by the legals, obviously, but it would be an asset that we wouldn't be losing. And the way I see it as well is that there are different things going on here, because there would be the demolition of the Civic Hall and Arts Centre. And then what's in the bigger plan? Have we put in an offer for people in action? Are we in talks with Warwickshire County Council over the library? How long would the area be empty for before anything started to get built on it? These are all questions that need answering. There's lots of other questions I've asked of officers, and I'm still waiting for some answers back on them. They would quite happily take them to the task and finish group. And we also, as we've heard tonight from statements, we need to be assured of the equipment that's in the Civic Hall. What's happening to it whilst it's empty? Can you confirm what monies have been paid over the last 10 years that were involved in the council's maintenance? Because it's going around on social media that we've not spent any money on maintenance on the Civic Hall in the past 10 years. Well, I know when I was over there was changing all the lights for LED, so there's one cost that I can think of. But to say that we've paid nothing on maintenance over the past 10 years is a bit strange. What's the criteria for assessing which organisations you can consider as suitable for the takeover of the Civic Hall? Will officers be able to assist the community and other groups and the interested parties in making their bids? There's lots and lots of questions, Chair, that we need to ask. We can't ask all these questions tonight, but we could if we put the recommendation forward for either a working group or task and finish. I think I'll need a seconder for that, but that is my recommendation, Chair, that we have one of them groups be put forward and invite all interested parties and all questions to that, so we can get a full picture of what we are looking at. Thank you, Chair.
Before I come to the second part of this, clearly Councillor Watkins has raised a number of points. Do the portfolio holders want to answer any of those points before I go to getting a second and things like that?
If he wants to give me a list of the questions, he did come out with them, email with a list on, I can try and answer them for you.
I can't remember all the questions that Councillor Watkins levied, but one which sticks in my mind is about the possibility of officers assisting interested groups. Perhaps if he had attended the Cabinet at the last occasion, he would have actually learnt the answer when I actually qualified this and said that we could not have officers do that for two reasons. A, there is the officer time and capacity, which we simply don't have, but also there is the issue of fairness, that you could potentially have officers assisting groups who would then potentially have to be going on to assess those bids which come in, which would lead to procedural unfairness and potential challenge to any potential winning bid. So that would not be possible. However, as I understand it from Director Hollis, the Theatre Trust has made an offer to assist any interested parties who may wish to put in a bid on the expression of interest. What I would also say, Chair, is that I think we are straying from the actual decision which was made by Cabinet. The Cabinet decision was not to reopen the Civic Hall at this time. We have to remember, and I think a lot of people are forgetting, the financial backdrop which we are in. We cannot, in my view, afford to wait for task and finish groups to decide about what we do for the budgetary future of this council. It costs over £800,000 a year to run. And as Director Hollis set out in his opening statement, we have over £1.5 million to find just to balance the books for next year. This isn't a decision that we have taken lightly. This is a decision we have to make to balance the books. And it does not preclude the possibility that in the future, if there is something which changes our financial circumstances, then that decision could be re-looked at, because the wording is quite specific of the recommendation where it says at this time. What we need at this precise moment in time, Chair, is financial certainty for our budget preparations, and nothing which has come forward so far, in my view, would deal with that. But I would also say it's interesting, Chair, that we are having all these questions now from the opposition. Where were they when they were in control, actually making difficult decisions about the future of our borough? It is down to us now to pick up the mess which we inherited. And if they had actually dealt with some of these issues when they were in control, perhaps putting it out to tender over a decade ago, and ensuring that the capital expenditure which is required, we would not be in this position. I am absolutely categoric about this, Chair. I do not want to be here making this decision, but I feel as it has been forced upon us because of the financial situation we're in and the lack of attention and interest that the previous administration, of which Councillor Watkins was a cabinet member, shown over this issue.
Just come back to say, is there a second to the proposal?
Chair, can I second the proposal, and can I speak on that now, or you want me to speak on it later? Amendment.
I just want to take some advice on a matter relating to the difference between task and finish group and a subcommittee here, and then I'll come back to you on that. I will let you speak straight away, though. Thank you. I've just taken some advice on this, and we don't have task and finish groups, so we can't appoint one. But we do, however, have working groups, as you know, in the Constitution, and select committees. A working group would be a shorter term than a select committee. So if you'd like to clarify what it is that you're proposing again, and then we can see if we can get a second to what you're actually proposing, then we can take a vote.
In that case, it'll be a working group that I'd like to suggest. And also, just to come back on a few things that's just been said.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to put forward the motion, please. Form a working group to look into the various questions raised tonight.
My recommendation is that we put to Cabinet that we form a working group to look at the closure of the Civic Hall.
This OSP which will decide to set up if your recommendation is accepted, not Cabinet.
That we put to vote tonight to see if we can form a working group with all interested parties, all questions, and that I realise now that I need a seconder, and then it goes to this group to vote on to put the recommendation forward to Cabinet. Thank you.
I haven't quite got it. If we decide tonight to form a working group, then we decide it. It doesn't have to go to Cabinet for approval, and we can set the terms of reference to chair and stuff. I just want to make sure that what you're proposing is something that we can actually vote on that is legitimate here, rather than you putting forward something that we can't actually then decide. Come in.
Whereas I understand the proposal for a working group, however, the recommendations before us tonight are that we do not reopen the Civic Hall due to the financial constraints placed on the council, which that doesn't address, and also that the lease and the Bedworth Arts Centre to be honoured for the Bedworth Arts Centre doesn't address that either at this point, and I'm concerned that this is kicking it down the line and we're not actually making a decision in relation to what the issue is tonight. And I'd like to know whether that's done independently or part of deferring what proposals are on here, or the proposals on here are going to be recommended as set out with that as an...
Perhaps you can clarify, Councillor Watkins, just so people know what's happening.
Yeah, okay. Until a working group has been formed, looked at all the questions, met with interested parties, and then we can go forward from there.
Councillor Condacor, your seconding is noted. Do you wish to speak now?
Well, I don't think we can ask the Cabinet to set a working group up, because the decision is to not open the venue at the current moment. So I think a working group could go on with the Cabinet decision not changed, but then the Cabinet decision changed as a result of the work of the working party if we come up with a solution of how to save it. So I think we're getting into semantics, but I think it is right that we say this is to look at how it is reopening whatever way it is. But obviously we counter the Scrutiny Committee, tell the Cabinet what to do. So I think we do need a working party, so I second that part, but I think we also just need to get the semantics right in terms of, because the Cabinet's decided not to reopen it at the current moment, that it's not that that's reversed, but it's actually that it's to look at possibilities of how we reopen it in the future, effectively.
Marshall seconding. The proposal from Councillor Watkins was to defer the decision and set up a working group. You've just said that you second the working group, but not the deferment. Can you make up your mind what you're seconding, please?
Change what he said so I could second it. Thank you.
Easier. I recommend that we set up a working group to look at the closure of the Civic Hall, involving all interested parties and perhaps meeting in Bedworth, as has been asked.
Your seconding is noted. Councillor Clark, you wish to speak?
The recommendation is set out before us this evening.
Clarify for Councillor Clark.
I thought I had a separate, as has been discussed already, that is a separate decision which people will make tonight. This is just to form a working group to look at the interested parties and the questions that everybody's got.
Thank you. So we now have a proposal and a seconded, and I think we understand what's been proposed. Put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? That's lost. So any further questions for the Cabinet members here relating to the report?
We haven't got a committee system because what Councillor Wilson was talking about, it's too late to change things now. We haven't got time. If we had this council running a committee system, we would have been discussing this a year ago. So we've lost a lot of time. But there's a lot of questions we do need to ask if we haven't got a working group looking at this. And one important question Councillor Watkins asked was, what's happened to people in action? Have we put a bid in, or are we taking a bid in to buy the building? Because that means we're going down the road of taking the whole site over, turfing more people out, and going down this rabbit hole without any democratic debate on it. And this is why the committee system, or working party, or whatever, is really important. And if this council keeps blocking us having working parties to look at stuff, the only option for the public is to actually petition to change this council to a committee system. Because at the moment, decisions are taken by the Cabinet, and these scrutiny committees are supposed to properly delve into subjects. If that doesn't happen, just like Sheffield, we need to petition to change how this council works, so we don't get in the mess where decisions are taken, we can't discuss the decision because it's been told it's not closing, it's not closing, it's not closing, and then it's too late to discuss, it's too late to discuss. Yeah, we're in a right mess. I do want the question of the people in action sorted, and I'm very, very alarmed that we're going to stand up a process that is going to fail because the public won't be able to put a bid in at zero cost. It was mentioned earlier that the Civic Hall never made a profit. The fire station never made a profit. These things are public services, and these public services educate, entertain, keep people warm, keep people from being lonely, and we need to run these public services as cheaply and as efficiently as possible. It doesn't matter if we run them or the community runs them, but they're public services. So to say an arts centre doesn't make a profit is just nuts. And we have £15 million going to Stratford-upon-Avon, the wonderful Shakespeare Theatre there. It gets 15 million. So I do think we need to look, and if this venture needs £250,000, not 15 million a year, but £250,000, a committee, a working party, should look at how we get that £250,000. Not just say we can spend
Councillor, can I just interrupt? You're going way off the topic here.
it is a scrutiny committee, and you're not allowing us to have a working party. And can we have an answer to the question on people in action?
I'd like to answer the question regarding people in action.
I'll field that as that comes more under my portfolio, Chair. In relation to people in action, we have to remember that the decision before us tonight is to consider the issue specifically about the reopening of the Civic Hall and not the vision document which was put out about the regeneration of Bedworth Town Centre. So that isn't actually what is being scrutinised tonight, although I have said to the chair of your respective counterpart in Business and Regeneration and Planning, OSP, I'm happy to bring that forward. The answer specifically about a conversation with people in action is there hasn't been a conversation at this moment in time because there is no concrete plan at this moment in time. All we have put forward is a vision of what could happen. And it's important to note this, Chair, because our experience with transforming Nuneaton is that we were in this exact same position almost a decade ago where we had to put forward our ideas of what could happen within the town centre. Then you build up a body of evidence, then you do a viability assessment, then you go out and try and find interested parties, public, private sector, whoever, to look at the funding and whether we possibly can do it ourselves and all that information. What we have to do next in relation to that specific item, Chair, is have a viability assessment of the whole scheme, which will then look at all the different component parts and how they work together. So not just the Civic Hall, but the library, the multi-storey car park, which is factored into there, the new proposed retail units and office space, and indeed the housing, and that will go in there, because they all feed in together to look at the financial viability of the overall scheme. And then if it isn't possible to do certain bits, so for example, if we cannot afford to buy people in action, then you can remodel, rescale and do more work on it. That is the whole point of a viability assessment, to work out whether what you have looked at is possible and then scaling back to the art of the possible. There was another point, but I've forgotten it. I apologise if I've missed a point, but I think that covers the people in action point.
Councillor Clark listed to speak.
Recommendations as set out, Chair, because the other point was lost. The recommendations as set out, it's not making good reading, however you look at this report, Chair. We're never going to be able to make or turn around the viability of the Civic Hall as it is at the moment, given the figures that we've got here. I am loath to have to do it, but I would move the recommendations as set out, because I don't think there's any other point at the moment or any point prolonging that decision, because what you're going to do is create more conflict, more pressure on the council at a time when we haven't even got the money to, we're in a deficit this year. So, as I said, we can't go on funding deficits. It's lovely to do. I'd love to do it. But at this point, we cannot do that. There is an option, as Councillor Wilson's indicated, of regenerating the area, and you can get monies for that. But what we can't do is raise the dead, I'm afraid. And I'm sorry to put it that bluntly. The only thing I would make comment on, and I'd ask just to be noted, is the point that Mrs Ross made in relation to the heating for the elderly and those who are in need in the area. but I'm sure we can provide facilities, or we are providing facilities, either through the Borough Council or through ours and the County Council, for that to happen. I'm hopeful that that would be the case, rather than having to provide somewhere of this size to actually to enable that to happen. But those are my comments, Chair, and I'd move the recommendation as set out in the report.
Joe, moving the recommendation. I do have a couple of other people who've indicated to speak, so with bearing that in mind, I'll take those speakers. Councillor Kenny, you've... Okay. Councillor Morton, you wish to speak.
Clark, on this very motion that we're here to discuss, I waited for weeks, and we'd asked for, and they were provided, for these two major reports, a sight of them. And I read them both very carefully, and they're the documents that I've been anxiously waiting for. And I've read those documents. I've read those documents, honestly, in the light of me really being concerned about not the losses to the council, but the other sort of losses, not the financial ones, the cultural ones, the educational ones, the fun, the happiness, the theatre. They're major losses, but I don't know how to value them, not in pounds, shillings and pence. But that's the awful task that this council had to deal with, the pounds, shillings and pence. And when I got those reports and I read them closely, like the co-opted member, Mrs. Ross, said, this place is in a hell of a mess. And I don't think it's recoverable. So I would actually support the motion that's been put forward to go through as recommended, based on evidence, and based on evidence only. There's one other issue I'd like to ask Mr. Hollis about. That is the second report that I found so important, on the valuation of the repairs to make it right. And I think this is really important, because if the recommendation passes, then we go to the second stage, which is hopefully people coming forward, and I pray people come forward to take this on for the community. So I think it's important to actually get out there what the opportunities are, and one of my questions to Mr. Hollis, the boiler report, it's independent, but a lot of people think that actually it's still overinflated. So would the council undertake to allow any certified engineer in that business to actually go in and take a look at those boilers?
And maintenance officer for the Borough Council undertook that work because that's their expertise and specialism. So it was an independent, impartial consultant engineer. I'm sure if needed to be, we would allow somebody else to inspect that, or even following looking at the report to see if there's required any further evaluation of that. I don't see any reason why that couldn't happen, but I will explicitly say that's an independent consultant engineer that the authority has used previously on other projects, and I think it just clearly shows the state of the boiler and heating system. And it is an estimate, it is an advice note. There would require to be a procurement undertaken because of the value of that work. So that would have to be, procurement throughout our procurement team in order for that work to be undertaken. But I don't see any reason why that couldn't happen if that was required. But I stress, it's an estimate. Until you went out to a tendering process, then you would be looking at a procurement situation. Thank you.
Markham, you wish to add something?
It's actually something that Councillor Clark said, if I can just clarify something. Reference the warm spaces that we were talking about. They are being offered at the museum, Pingles, Bedworth Leisure Centre and all the libraries. So there are plenty of places to go.
I've got nobody else who's indicated to speak, so I'm conscious of the fact that we have a thing to move to the recommendation on this. Does that receive a second? Councillor Kenner? All those in favour of going with the recommendation, please show. And against?
Chair, can you record my vote on the minutes?
Any abstentions? Thank you. In which case the recommendation is approved. Thank you. So with that, we can now move forward in the agenda. I was conscious that we were going to move item 7 to before item 5, but we've taken public consultation item 5 realistically now as part of that, unless there was any other consultees on. Sorry? Mr. Margrave, you indicated you want to speak on item 5, but I know you want to speak on item 8. Is what you wish to speak about separate from what we've just discussed and separate from item 8?
Mr. Chairman, I had, because if I had raised concern and been told that I could speak on item 5 in relation to my concerns about the bias that I believe not only you but other councillors have in the decision that they've just taken in being predetermined under the Localism Act. They already declared their position. They came into this meeting closed-minded. The Equality Impact Assessment has not taken place, so the Equality Act has been breached. And under item 5, I had wanted to make it clear that this council is opening itself to a judicial review, which will cost more than keeping the Civic Hall open for a short period to do a task and finish or working group. So I did want to raise, and I will forward now in an email and make a complaint to the Standards Committee about members who have attended this committee with predetermination. I think it's absolutely disgraceful, frankly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would just like to add, on a personal note, I did seek advice from the council's legal counsel here, who ruled, advised that there was no predetermination involved in councillors attending the meeting tonight. That there's a difference between somebody having a predisposition towards something and somebody who's crossed the line into predetermination. And so please forward your email and we'll deal with it in accordance with the council's procedures. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, questions to Cabinet, and members with questions to Cabinet, please. Councillor Condacall.
Thank you very much. This is for the Cabinet Member for Finance. We've only just got the paperwork for next week's Scrutiny Committee, which is the first one to actually have any financial information for this year in. And it indicates your portfolio is 233,000 overspent as a projection for this year. Could the Cabinet Member explain what that is made up of and why this committee hasn't been given the paperwork of that expenditure, and likewise the business committee that will be in a few weeks' time? The committee members haven't had any financial information for the whole scrutiny year, so can you explain his own deficit?
This question is not about this panel, so it's not just any questions to Cabinet that you wish to ask, it's questions to Cabinet in relation to the business of this scrutiny panel.
Which is finance. I'm asking the finance about what's his losses and can we have full financial information for all the scrutiny panels now? Thank you.
Councillor Croft, I'll leave it up to you whether you wish to answer this.
Councillor Condacall's party colleague at the council in July, I believe, the issues we've had in the finance department this year. We warned for quite a long time that we had effectively a single point of failure in the department. It's very easy to identify that problem. It's much harder to fix it when we've got staffing issues, we've got problems with recruitment and retention. The issue occurred, and we've spent the past sort of about 6 months now effectively trying to put finance back on a much more rationalist basis. We are restructuring the team, we are rewriting the chart of accounts. This has severely impacted workload because we need to get the right trained people in the right positions. We've taken an awful lot of time on the audit for that reason, because as he knows, I know he's been, he normally performs his own little independent audit with the finance officers with asking questions, but that's what's delayed it. And I can only apologise to the committee, and as I have apologised to the council and the cabinet for the delays. In terms of my portfolio, I believe I said at the cabinet that is largely in the Revs and Ben's portfolio, and I'll give him a breakdown of the exact cost because I know he likes the granular detail. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Condacall.
Thank you, Chair, about the cost of the new leisure centre, because when it was going through, it was going to be 26 million, and the leader said it's now a £34 million project. Is that because we're doing more, or is it really 34 million for the leisure centre, or is that for other stuff as well? Thank you, Chair.
To my portfolio, a large part of what we've been finding is an increase in material and labour costs, which is not a problem which is unique to this authority. It's happening across the country, which if anyone reads the newspapers on a daily basis will be able to see. I can assure Councillor Condacall that there is no gold plating at all within the plans for the new Bedworth Leisure Centre. It is a very, for want of a better phrase, utilitarian design. It is to do exactly what it says on the tin, which is provide a physical activity hub, and to do so at the minimum standard. But in terms of using the minimum standard, it isn't just what we can get away with. There is a balance of making sure that we don't cost ourselves more in the long run, so actually making sure it is fit for purpose, and that if we cut a corner here, is it going to mean that in 5, 10, 15 years' time, we're going to have to pay more out because we've cut something here? So I know that officers have been working with BAM in particular, who are the relevant construction company, to look at where we can actually compromise on some of these issues. If we can reduce it from £34 million, and of course we will do so because we are very conscious about the current financial climate.
Councillor Wilson, perhaps we can ask President Putin, who's responsible for all of these cost increases, to pay the money. Any other member? Director Hollis.
Chair, just to add to that and continue with Councillor Wilson's response, we're also working very closely with Sport England, and in order to meet their criteria and their funding, we have to meet their specification in terms of national governing bodies, etc. So really to further support that is that we're working very closely not only with BAM, the construction company, but also Sport England and their independent consultants that are supporting the authority to make sure we get the right design specification that is practical but hard-wearing and provides good quality for money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the clarification. Any more questions for the Cabinet members? In which case then we can move on to item number 8, which was the question that was referred to this panel by the last full council. Do we have a report on this? Yeah. Okay. The report on this is in the addendum that we've got with its associated text and everything. I take it all members have had a chance to read through it. Does anybody wish to raise any points on it at all? Councillor Condacall. Sorry, Mr Margrave had asked to speak on this.
Clear from the request for expressions of interest in the is the timeline for making a bid or the criteria for bid. So obviously this question has moved on, but it was referenced in the report. The council have not consulted local people about these plans, and while it is welcome that you are asking for people to come forward to run the Civic Hall, the time lost because the report in November 2021 hasn't been published and no action seems to have been taken to prepare the Civic Hall to reopen in 2023. Will the council pause and look at all the options and be serious about the future of the Civic Hall with a serious public consultation and support for the community to make a bid, or for the council to look to make the Civic Hall break even? Right now it seems that the work needed to reopen the Civic Hall in 2023 hasn't been done. The venue doesn't need to pay rates for 3 months, and after that, you can extend the rate exemptions. You could even get free rates with a charity. You can keep the building protected and maintained while applying for funding and looking at options. That is why you were wrong to decide today not to reopen, because you could have opened without any staff and just kept it going, and then applied for funding and got it back up and what you should have decided was not to reopen this year, but to look to reopen in the future. The decisions taken today have no democratic mandate because voters were told this wouldn't happen. Voters were told anybody who suggested the Civic Hall could close or be demolished was spreading fake news. In a democracy, we need proper consultation. Finally, at the council meeting, it was said the other day, a question put by a resident would come to this committee, but that question hasn't come. Only one of the questions came. The leader of the council said you would consider it at OSP, that it was the same matter and it was going to come here anyway. It hasn't. Why are you telling us you will consider something in full council and then it doesn't come here? Finally, I just want to say that Bedworth has no community hub, no area office and no toilet even. It doesn't even have council meetings there anymore. So the Civic Hall was a centre for Bedworth to be connected to this council. Tonight, your decision has basically said Bedworth isn't an equal partner in this borough, that Nuneaton is where everything happens and it's all about Nuneaton. Goodbye, Bedworth. That's what you said tonight. And I think saying that the Civic Hall loses money is untrue. The museum loses money. The town hall loses money. Councillors cost us a fortune. Are we going to get rid of you too? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of clarification, anybody wish to ask of speaker? No? Okay. I believe we have another speaker listed on this one. Mr. Smith. Okay. If he's left, we can move on to back to where we were. Councillor Condacoy, you were about to speak.
Yeah, I think I just started. I think one thing this question to count, and it's absolutely appalling that this didn't go to a committee a year ago. So actually we could have started discussing the Civic Hall and the Kersley as well. And I think that a lot of the questions in this still want some scrutiny. And I would actually vote, we actually have a working party to look at this question and the options going forward for the Civic Hall. And in particular, the answer given to Mrs. Sinclair were wrong. As we know, all the figures were wrong. So if you look on page 29, where it said the average attendance was 275 for the 107 shows, we now know that is out by miles because there was 49,000 people attend shows and there was 102 or 103 shows. So, yeah, a lot of the information provided when people ask questions at full council, they're given inaccurate answers. And I think particularly the answers should actually be withdrawn from the question at full council and proper data provided to Mrs. Sinclair. And I do actually think we should have a working party to have a look at the whole issue about these closures. I say she brought up two, the Civic Hall and Kersley Community Centre, and I think we need to have some scrutiny. We have cabinet members come to these meetings, keep telling us why we can't have scrutiny because we're too late. We told you for a year it wasn't closing, and now you've got a scrutiny meeting, but we're closing it in a few days' time, so we can't have a scrutiny on it. I think we need a working parties in this scrutiny committees to actually start looking at things and asking officers questions. Thank you, Chair.
Our portfolio holders wish to address any of the points made?
Say that the Kersley Community Centre actually isn't closing. There are people that are hopefully going to be taking that over. So you've just said that they're closing. It isn't. All of the figures, apart from the 2019-2020, are correct on the answer. We've explained, Mr. Hollis has explained why there were difference in the 1920, because that was something that was missed off that wasn't noticed, but the rest of them are accurate.
Councillor Condacoy.
Can it higher than the Pantos in 1 year? Surely, as the figures for 1819 are similar, would have made the same mistake every year. And I can't believe there's 33,000 in 1 year and suddenly we went up to 49,000. I can't believe we've suddenly gained 16,000 people. We haven't had that big improvement in Civic Hall, so I would challenge the Cabinet members to have that checked. Thank you.
March 2019 OSP panel. So they'd already been to scrutiny, and that's where the figures came from.
Thank you, Kenna.
So, in response to a couple of things Councillor Condacoy's made tonight, he's spoken a lot about having more transparency, more openness around this or well, around the Civic Hall. But on both agenda items, he's asked for working parties to be set up behind closed doors, unminuted meetings. So I'm just struggling to understand sort of the logic behind wanting more transparency by actually removing it. Thank you.
Proceed.
Doors, that is just a feature of the council's constitution. I like them to be open and public.
No more speakers on this. We have a recommendation, I believe, on this. Is there not? In which case, I propose that we note the question. In doing so, I would like to welcome the fact that the inaccuracies in the question have been addressed, in the fact that there was more than one round of consultation for the Kersley Centre, and we have actually had viable expressions of interest that have been pursued. Excellent. Thank you. Everybody happy to note this one? Anybody? Take all in favour. Anybody else against? To record Councillor Condacourt and Councillor Watkins is against. Thank you. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of business.
That is indeed the end of the business.
Oh, there was one more item, wasn't there, which was a it's in the addendum.
Well, it's not on the agenda, Chair, so you'll have to...
Okay. Okay, so we have a briefing note which is in the addendum, yeah, which is for noting. Are we happy to note this? Is it? Oh, do beg your pardon. It was sent out separately. Yes. Sorry, it's been a bit of a long meeting. I do apologise to members. Okay, that concludes the meeting. Thank you one and all. Thank you for your patience and your attendance and comments.